Well, hello, Happy New Year, and welcome back to another
YouTube exclusive content.
We're going to start today by watching a video I recently made for TikTok, and we're going to watch the whole thing, so settle in and get comfy. I feel like I always have to prep a YouTube audience for something like this because anytime I include clips from videos I've made for other platforms in a YouTube video, invariably, there are people in the comments complaining about how the video had too much filler and padding and was mostly just me playing videos I'd already made for other platforms. But here's the thing you need to understand. I'm not padding when I do that. I'm not trying to artificially make the runtime of the video longer for no reason. In fact, I'm always actively looking for ways to make my videos shorter. It's just that this video, the one that you're currently watching, is about the video that I'm going to show you. So the video we're about to watch is giving you essential context to understand the conversation that I want to explore in this video. Okay, if you've already seen this clip I'm about to play, maybe you've already seen it on my TikTok or my Instagram, go ahead and skip forward. Otherwise, here we go. I was recently tagged in a video where this creator is getting absolutely ratioed and dragged for responding to a commenter on another video who said this: "At this point, I think another Trump presidency would get us to a better place faster. He'd destroy the country if given the chance, and yeah, that sucks, but it's happening anyways, and the sooner the country collapses, the sooner we can rebuild and fix our mistakes." And I wanted to make a video addressing this because the mindset expressed by that commenter is a mindset that I'm seeing gain more and more popularity amongst people on the left. This mindset that the entire political system in America is so irredeemably broken that there is no point in trying to participate in it in good faith anymore, and we would be better off just letting the entire thing collapse and burn to the ground and completely fall into chaos so that we could rebuild something better from the ashes. Before I go any deeper here, I want to be really clear that this video is not trying to silence or diminish any voices that are offering valid criticisms of the Democratic Party or the current American political system. Politically active people on the left should continue to call out problems where they see them and should continue to use their voices to advocate for better representation when it comes to implementing progressive policies. The problems that you have with the Democratic Party, the criticisms that you have, the frustrations that you have, the anger that you feel, that is all valid, and I'm not here to diminish that in any way. What I am trying to say, though, is that this mindset of just let it all burn, the faster it all burns, the faster we can rebuild something better, is a deeply flawed mindset and one that really terrifies me. I really don't think that when people say this, they're actually playing out the tape of what that would really look like, what the collapse of a nation as big and powerful as the United States of America would actually look like. Started fighting itself and broke out into a civil war. What it would look like if the differing political ideologies in the United States started having to fight each other for control of the now fallen nation state. What it would look like if the country with the largest nuclear arsenal on the face of the planet were to no longer have stable leadership or a stable governmental structure. Again, I can't stress enough here that I understand the frustration of being a leftist in America. Progressive leftists in America simply do not have any frustrating because far-right authoritarian religious extremists in America do have mainstream political power and representation for their ideas and values. I drew this little visual aid to help sort of illustrate what I think is going on here. This bus that's teetering on the edge of this cliff, this is America and the American political system. Republicans and Republican voters reside in the back of the bus over here. They're jumping up and down and dropping anvils back here and just sort of blissfully unaware of the danger that they're in. They don't believe in climate science. I mean, Donald Trump said that on day one he wants to drill, baby, drill, and reinforce America's racist fear of immigrants by closing the borders. These people want a national ban on abortions with no exceptions. They want to chemically castrate trans people and essentially legislate queer people out of existence. They want to live in an authoritarian Christian theocracy. They want to literally turn America into Gilead from The Handmaid's Tale, and that's not an over-exaggeration. Look into Project 2025. This is just sort of the out loud agenda of these people. Now, most of the Democratic Party resides right around here on the bus. It's not great. They're not really doing much to help get the bus back on the road, but they are, managing to keep the fulcrum of the middle of the bus from fully tipping over and falling into the ravine. And maybe people like Bernie Sanders and Marianne Williamson are like sitting somewhere here-ish. But progressive leftist voters are all the way over here, fully outside of the bus and pulling on the bumper, trying to get the bus back on the road. And this is a really frustrating and isolating position to be in because we don't have any mainstream political power or weight to help us accomplish the goal of getting the bus back on the road and driving in the right direction. So a lot of times the best that we can settle for is just preventing the people over here on this part of the bus from adding any more weight to their position. And what this results in is a lot of these people saying, you know what? Screw everyone on this bus. Let's just let it go, let it fall into the ravine, burn to a crisp, and we can build our own better bus from scratch. Which maybe sounds like a pretty appealing idea. The problem is none of the people who are rooting for that seem to realize that they are literally tethered to this thing. So the moment we let it go and let it fall into the ravine, we're going to sort of notice Looney Tunes style, a coil of rope that is quickly unraveling and going over the edge, and then we're going to look down and see that the coil of rope is tied around all of our ankles. We don't just get to let this thing fall into the ravine and blow up and walk away without a scratch. We go over the edge with it. You and everyone you care about will go over the edge with it and be a part of the explosion and the carnage. Because here's the thing. This is a bad situation, but this is still a functioning bus. It's still a bus with an engine that works. And if it were properly managed, it could actually drive down a road and get us to some pretty good destinations. But if it's actually allowed to fall and be completely destroyed, there's absolutely no guarantee, A, that you will even survive that fall. In fact, there's a very high likelihood that you and many people that you care about would not survive a situation like that. And I mean that literally, like you would not live through it. But also, if you did somehow manage to survive it, there is simply no guarantee that you would be able to rebuild something better than this from the ashes of this massive bus explosion. So what I'm saying here is, you're right to be upset when you look out in the world and see awful things happening and you wish that more people were doing more to stop it. But if you look across the street and see that the house across the street from you is on fire and the people inside are begging for someone to help, and you call your local fire department and they say, we're not going to help, it doesn't make any sense for your response to that to be, well, then I'm going to burn my own house down and all of the houses on my side of the street down as well. Not only does that not do anything for the house across the street that was already on fire, it doesn't do anything to help them, but it just serves to make yours probably worse. I really hope that makes sense.
Okay, you made it through that whole long clip. Good for you. I'm super proud of you. So anyway, I said all that and it went okay, not great, but also not awful. The response was pretty split. Plenty of people felt like the analogy was really helpful and agreed with what I was trying to say, and many other people were really upset by it. And I wanted to explore one of the response videos I got and talk about something that's got me kind of stumped and definitely worried as we approach crunch time for the 2024 presidential election. So this is a response video from a creator named Leah. Her TikTok handle is here on the screen, and I'll link the video both on Instagram and TikTok in the description. I wanted to respond to some of what she says here, but mostly just want to use her video as a jumping off point to explore the larger topic that made me want to make this video.
I do want to go on record saying that I'm not trying to add fuel to this infighting fire, nor do I have any issues with Austin whatsoever. I actually really like their content. And to add further context, I myself am chronically ill, so the odds of me surviving a revolution are in the negatives. Also, while I do have criticism of his video, I cannot 100% say that I am myself an accelerationist. Like, I don't know where I land.
So right off the bat, I want to say I fully believe Leah here when she says she doesn't want to contribute to any infighting on the left. But this is kind of the main thing that I want to talk about in this YouTube video. Currently, the left is eating itself alive just a few short months before a crucial presidential election. The left seems to me, at present, to be much more focused on fighting and arguing with itself than it does on defeating conservatives and preventing far-right authoritarian religious extremists from reaching the executive branch of power in November. And whether Leah means to or not, her video is contributing to that infighting. Also, just so we're clear, so is this video that I'm currently making. Like Leah, I don't want this video to contribute to infighting on the left, but I probably won't be able to stop the fighting from happening in my comments nonetheless, or stop fellow leftists from making their own response videos to this one, and so on and so forth. I'll explore more about the infighting and what about it has me so particularly flummoxed and worried later on. For now, let's get back into Leah's video.
But what I do know is that I disagree with certain points that he made. The biggest one is that the bus itself is functional. He says later on in the video that if we were just to get the bus off of the cliff, then the bus could drive us somewhere nicer. And so if we are continuing the bus analogy, that to me is ignoring all of the flaws that came within the making of the bus. For fuck's sake, it was made off of slavery, so the odds of it just being a regular functioning bus is not realistic. Again, to continue the bus analogy, this bus that we are trying to drive is one that was built so that it always tries to turn fucking right. I know nothing about cars, but if there is something in the middle, like the axis, the line, I don't know, but that keeps it going straight, this one is fucked, this one is wonky, this one goes to the right. So that is big problem number one, is to assume that the bus, if we just got it off of the cliff, it would be functional.
Yeah, so the thing about this video is, I agree with most of it. This is the thing about the infighting that I'm witnessing on the left and that I'm begrudgingly participating in on the left is I find myself again and again, as of late, caught up in heated debates with people who I don't disagree with, people who I share ideological values with, and who have very similar perspectives as my own, people whose goals do not differ from my own, people who believe in the same things that I believe in. And what's so frustrating is that I feel like I wind up spending a lot of time trying to convince these people that we are not enemies, that we do indeed play for the same team and want the same things. We're just using different language and tactics. So Leah's correct here to criticize my bus analogy. I mean, it's a fine analogy, but like many analogies, it works just well enough to illustrate the exact points I created it to illustrate, but it falls apart if you sit down and try to find all the ways that it fails to be an exact one-to-one comparison for the actual real-life situation it exists to represent. I mean, of course it does. It's a bad doodle on a piece of paper briefly explained in a TikTok video. And just as a side note, it always kind of chaps my hide when people try to poke holes in the analogies I make to show how they aren't perfect. Analogies, as I understand them, aren't meant to be perfect. Things that are analogous to one another are definitionally similar and not identical. I kind of really like this comedic comment one person wrote. As someone who drives a bus, I have a lot of problems with this drawing. For starters, where's the door, dude? Do better. It makes me laugh because this is essentially how I think people wind up sounding whenever they decide to point out all of the ways that any given analogy isn't 100% perfect. Because you can pretty much make those criticisms of any analogy. The only real aim of an analogy should be to successfully illustrate a specific point. And if the analogy succeeds in doing that, even if it's a point that you disagree with, then it's a successful enough analogy. IMHO. But like, yeah, I said the bus is functional, which does seem to imply that I'm ignoring all the ways in which the bus is dysfunctional, and there are so many. But that's also why I'm showing the bus in, a great state of distress and imminent danger, and giving really clear caveats like this. Before I go any deeper here, I want to be really, really clear that this video is not trying to silence or diminish any voices that are offering valid criticisms of the Democratic Party or the current American political system. Politically active people on the left should continue to call out problems where they see them, and should continue to use their voices to advocate for better representation when it comes to implementing progressive policies. The problems that you have with the Democratic Party, the criticisms that you have, the frustrations that you have, the anger that you feel, that is all valid, and I'm not here to diminish that in any way. When I say stuff like this, it's not just a throwaway line. I have to make really economical choices in the editing of these videos to keep them as short and digestible as possible, so anything that's in the video is in there for a very specific reason. By including these caveats, I'm trying to let the audience know that I am aware of the many problems our country has, and I am not making my video to say America is this amazing place and all we have to do is fix one or two small things and everything will be perfect. I'm trying to remind my leftist audience that I already agree with them and their many valid criticisms of the USA. I'm doing my best to make it clear in the short amount of time I have that I am aware that there is much more to the story than what I'm going to explore with my crude drawing and my overly simplistic analogy. But look, the thing is, if we're being honest and we're actually going to really dig into it and deep dive on it video essay style, a bus is a pretty poor one-to-one comparison for a system of government meant to equitably provide structure and stability for 350 million people. A bus is a complex piece of machinery and engineering, no doubt, but it's nowhere near as complex or difficult to engineer as a governmental framework for a country as large and as powerful as the United States of America. When I say that the bus is essentially functional, I don't mean that there's nothing wrong with the bus aside from the obvious problem of it being precariously perched on the edge of a cliff. I mean that it's a functional enough piece of machinery that it could conceivably be reworked to drive the way we want it to eventually drive, given enough patience and persistence. I mean that the goal of potentially reworking the bus into a tool we can actually use to accomplish the implementation of more and more progressive policies is something that I believe is within reasonable reach. And I don't believe this in spite of the fact that the bus was originally built by slave labor on stolen land. I believe this because of that fact. Calm down, take a moment, breathe, remember we're on the same team, and please let me explain.
Everybody stay calm! What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm!
Any serious and honest examination of America's history is going to reveal many horrifying and terrible truths, obviously, but it should also tell a story of undeniable progress and perseverance. To further flesh out this insufficient bus analogy I've created, it wouldn't be very accurate to say that the bus was originally created by slave labor. And that's because it wasn't originally a bus at all. The concept of a bus didn't even exist during the period of this country's inception. It would be perhaps more accurate to say that what was initially built was some sort of carriage that was pulled by human beings instead of horses. And the drivers of that monstrous carriage went about setting up their empire by shooting the indigenous population out of the windows of their nightmare human-drawn torture machines. And now, several hundred years later, after several wars and the persistence of several generations of progressive Americans hoping to continue to build something stronger and better than a human-drawn nightmare torture machine. It's a bus. It's a bus with all kinds of problems that is constantly in grave danger of being completely destroyed, but it's still managed to go from being a horrifying, nightmarish, person-drawn carriage into being something considerably less nightmarish. Long history to make incremental improvements to the mechanics of this deeply flawed bus. If they had at any point given up their fight in favor of a bloody accelerationist revolution, we likely wouldn't be here to have this conversation today. And many things have been undeniably improved over the years. Women getting the right to vote, gay marriage being legalized, the increased visibility and representation of the wider spectrum of queer people that exist in the world. People of color gaining freedom and gaining increased protections and opportunities under the law. As frustrated as you may be with the current state of the bus, and remember, I already agree with and share your frustrations, it's hard to argue that the current state of the bus is not a clear and definitive improvement from the nightmarish human-drawn carriage of the slave era. In simpler terms, what I'm trying to say here is Leah starting her video by acknowledging the horrific origins of how this bus came to be in the first place, showing where it began and where it is now, is a perfect illustration of a clear historical trend toward justice. She's showing that our history is definitely cruel and fucked up, but it's also loaded with examples of us being able, but since we are staying with my shitty bus analogy, a wonky axle that makes the car pull to the right, that's something that can be fixed. We can fix that, and I'd rather try to fix that than try to build an entirely new bus from scratch, because remember, when we're talking about building a new bus here, we're actually talking about building something considerably more complicated than an actual bus.
Which brings me to problem 2 with Austin's video, which is, unsurprisingly, where he puts liberal Democrats. In his video, he puts the liberal Democrats on the left side, i.e. on the side that is weighing it to the ground, that is not weighing it off of the cliff. But I just don't think that the actions of Democratic leadership, especially in these last few months, shows that to be true. So much so that Joe Biden would rather plummet in popularity, which increases the chances of Trump winning again, rather than say no to Israel. Same thing with healthcare and same thing with climate change. Like, as much as Joe Biden, yes, is maybe not in the way back of the bus, jumping up and down, he's definitely not on the side of let's push it back to land. Unfortunately, our reality just is that Democrats have shown us time and time again that siding with capital comes above all else. Siding with healthcare lobbyists, siding with oil lobbyists, siding with Israeli lobbyists, all of that is to serve and protect the interests of capital. And when you side with capital so many times and give a big fuck you to your own constituency, eventually your popularity decreases. Eventually you get to a point where your actions make your opponent more likely to win. Which is why, if I were to do the bus analogy, I would put them to the right of the fulcrum. To the right as in they are still pulling us down towards the apocalypse. We cannot ignore the fact that it is a choice for Democratic leadership to continuously choose capital over popular policies, which inevitably help shuffle in the far-right extremists. So naturally I went ahead and I made my own diagram, okay? So here are all the leftist voters, same thing. Oh, sorry, it's flipped now. But this says America, and then here is Bernie, right on the kind of side of staying on the ground. Biden is past it, and Trump is all the way at the end, weighing it down. And just to further demonstrate it, we are all tied to the bus, like Austin said, because I agree with that. So now that you're seeing the new version, if you agreed with everything that I said up to here, then you should agree with this diagram, which then brings me to ask you, what good does voting for Joe Biden do? As much as he may not be on the side all the way weighing it down, he's still on the wrong side. In fact, it feels as if the more and more that the bus tips, the more and more Joe Biden is leaning backwards.
No notes here. I agree with everything she just said. That was a major oversight on my part. The fulcrum in my illustration makes it look like I'm saying that this fulcrum represents the ideological center of the American political spectrum. I mean, honestly, the specific location of the true center doesn't really factor into my drawing here at all, and I recognize how that's confusing. To me, the fulcrum more or less just represents a pivot point that can be used to gain leverage in the ideological war for the country's soul.
Good rhythm, love the enthusiasm. I feel like you're saying boys whole, and it's clearly soul. And I know, Artemis, you did write soul, right?
I did write soul.
So it's boys soul.
You gotta pay the troll toll, give this boy soul.
No, see, right there.
Again, I totally understand how visually what I've drawn here really looks like I'm saying that, you know, this point is political center, and that's on me. What's important to me here is the question of leverage and power. Leah's not wrong at all about the position of the different parties on the American political spectrum, but another thing I didn't properly explain or illustrate is the actual numbers and influence of the true left in America. These people over here. My original video made it seem like the left is this incredibly powerless, unpopular, and outnumbered contingent, and this is likely tied to me pointing out that progressive leftists have no real mainstream political power or representation in America, while people on the right over here do. What I wish I would have pointed out is that while these people over here may not have the weight and political power of the people over here, there are more people over here with ideas that are increasingly more and more popular, not just in America, but on the global stage. We may not have the political representation that the far right has, and that's largely due to the left's rejection of late-stage capitalism and the way that many of our ideas fail to serve capital, as Leah so astutely pointed out. But we do have people. We are continually winning the war of appealing to the collective human conscience. And as long as we keep winning the culture war and continue to make our ideas popular amongst people, we will continue to have strength in numbers that is significant enough to have real pull and leverage over here outside of the bus. And that's not nothing. That's important. It becomes nothing, though, really quick if we can't stay unified in our purpose and continue pulling as a team in the same direction. If we get so caught up in our own infighting that we let the bus fall, then all of our work and all of the work of progressives throughout history could wind up being tragically in vain. And this brings me back to the point of this video. Leah and I agree on way more points than we disagree on. What's so frustrating to me is how much it feels like we don't agree, even though we do. I'm frustrated by how much time and energy is going into creating a conversation that feels like we are at odds with each other when we're really not. I'm worried that I'm going to spend the next year trying to convince the Leahs on the left that we don't need to be fighting because I already agree with them, instead of trying to strategize with them about how we can defeat the right in the 2024 election and still fight for our collective goals. I see a lot of pro-Palestine leftists saying things like, you just watch, Trump is going to start campaigning on a pro-Palestine platform because Biden won't do it. Genuinely, I have friends who think that that's going to happen. And I'm sorry to say this, but if that's what you think, I think that's just delusional. I think you're dead wrong. That simply won't happen. There will be no pro-Palestine candidate available in the 2024 presidential election. At least not one that has a genuine shot at winning. Trump doesn't have to poach voters from the left by pretending to be pro-Palestine. He can literally sit back and coast to the White House while the left cannibalizes itself over its outrage at the Biden administration's refusal to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. It's already happening. The man is on trial for a laundry list of felonies a mile long. He's got his lawyers out here talking about how the president can commit any crime he wants to, up to and including murder, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. And he's still going to lazily skate over the finish line because the left is too busy fighting with itself over whether or not they can support a candidate who is simply maintaining the United States' long-held alliance with Israel. Like it or not, Joe Biden was pro-Israel when we elected him in 2020. He didn't just become pro-Israel after October 7th. I feel like a lot of people have this idea that October 7th happened and then the Biden administration got together in the Situation Room and they were like, okay, Mr. President, we have to make a really serious decision of who to support in the war that's about to break out. And then he chose Israel in that moment. But that's, of course, not at all what happened. There was no choice to be made because it was a choice that had already long since been established. The United States government, both Republicans and Democrats, have been allied with Israel my entire life. Every president I've ever voted for, every candidate in any race I've ever voted for, has been pro-Israel. It's just a fact of the American political system. And again, I'm not saying I like that fact. I'm just saying it is a given fact of the political reality in America. It's information that we already knew before October 7th, 2023. And it's something that isn't likely to change before November 2024. So the way I see it, we are literally in the infamous trolley dilemma right now. Neither set of tracks will effectively stop what's happening in Gaza. There isn't a candidate in this race that is going to end that horrific situation. So just like the trolley dilemma, there isn't an option that doesn't result in people dying. People are going to die and suffer no matter which option we choose. It's the grim reality of the moral dilemma we find ourselves in. It's what makes the trolley dilemma such a perplexing and difficult philosophical problem. There is no option that allows harm to be completely avoided. Right now, leftists like me are trying to reckon with the grim reality of the situation and advocate for the option that we believe has the best chance of preventing the most harm. Knowing that significant harm will be done no matter what, but trying to preserve what can be preserved so that we can continue to strengthen our position over here on the outside of the bus. But the infighting on the left primarily centers around the fact that there are other leftists who are refusing to participate in the decision altogether, taking a moral stance and saying that any decision that contributes to genocide and ethnic cleansing in any way is not a decision they can, in good conscience, get on board with. What they essentially want is a new trolley altogether. One that doesn't necessitate such barbaric choices. One that doesn't require being driven over innocent lives to function. And here's the thing that makes this all so goddamn difficult. They're not wrong at all. At least, not in principle. They have a completely morally sound position. They are morally and philosophically right to want a new option, a new trolley, a new, better bus. Pick whatever analogy you like best. They are not wrong to insist that we demand better than a decision that essentially accepts genocide as an unavoidable cost. All that being said, I just don't realistically believe that an entirely new trolley is something we can actually feasibly achieve before November. And I hate that. It makes me physically ill to reckon with that reality. I feel as though I'm standing next to the tracks, and I have my hand on the lever, and I'm about to make this unthinkable stomach-churning decision. There's a better way. We don't have to have a system that forces us to make choices like this, a system that forces us to accept things that are entirely unacceptable. And I completely agree with them, philosophically and morally. I don't think that they're wrong. I want to work with them to build that new and better system. But at the same time, I can't help but see this trolley barreling down the tracks toward us. And I can't help but note the speed with which it is moving. And I can't help but simply observe that it is moving too fast for us to build a new system before it does the harm that it's inevitably going to do. And I can't help but think that there might be something I can do in the short amount of time I have to potentially reduce some of the harm that the trolley is going to do.
This train is going to crash into these 5 people. Should we move the train to go this way, or should we let it go that way?
And this is what I find myself currently struggling with. Instead of working to defeat far-right authoritarianism, I'm stuck fighting with people who I don't position that I actually kind of fucking hate. The only reason, I just think it's more realistic and I don't see a safe, workable path around it. Ideally, we would never be forced to make such unthinkable choices. But the world we live in has simply never been an ideal place. Look, there's a big part of me that really respects the unwillingness to compromise. But also, as I see it, a complete unwillingness to compromise can only ever lead to one thing, and has historically only ever led to one thing: war and destruction. Even if the thing you're unwilling to compromise on is the right thing, if you aren't willing to compromise, you will eventually reach a point where moving forward is no longer possible and violent conflict is inevitable. I make a lot of videos where I'm advocating for things that I really believe are right and good, things that I believe will make the world a better and more hospitable place, a more humane place, a kinder place, ideas and positions that I have confidence and faith in, ideas and positions that fill me with hope. Right now, my heart is heavy and my day-to-day life is dark and difficult to navigate because a decision that doesn't fill me with hope, but with shame. I wish I was more confident in my beliefs on this matter, but to be perfectly honest, I'm just not. At all. I might be dead wrong. It might be totally feasible and possible to build an entirely new and better trolley or bus or whatever without some sort of violent, bloody, years-long revolution needing to occur. It might be possible to build that new vehicle before November 2024. I don't really think so, and I haven't really seen anyone explain how that could be achieved, but I could be wrong. I'd honestly love to be wrong about this. I don't know that I'm right here. All I know is that as long as the left is arguing over which way is the best way forward, the right is going to easily gain more power in America, and I'm not sure that the left is sufficiently scared of what that could mean for us as a country going forward. I just don't fully trust that we're truly seeing the long game. I don't trust that we're really respecting the existential threat that Trumpism continues to pose to life in America. Again, I could be totally wrong. Maybe another Trump presidency will come and go and nothing much will change. If he does win, I sincerely hope I am wrong. I hope my friends will be able to forgive me for making the best decision I felt I could make in a situation that felt impossible. And I hope the cause of progress and justice still has room to breathe and grow and flourish when the dust settles. All right, that does it. That's it for this video. That's all. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it was valuable in some way. I hope you found some humanity here. Yeah, patreon.com/AustinArcher if you like what I do here and you want to support it. If you don't have money to support me on a monthly basis, go ahead and subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel. That always helps out, and, you know, comment and share and do all of those things. Check out my music at austinarchermusic.bandcamp.com, which is linked in the description. I've got a new double vinyl out that's available if you want some music from me. It exists, and that's a way you could support what I'm doing here. Go get yourself a double vinyl. They're really cool and fun and great, and that's it. That's all. We'll see ya at the next one, okay? All right? Okay? Okay. All right, I love you. I love you so much. Bye-bye. Bye now. Bye-bye.